Hello and welcome back to Daily Express's Royal Roundup. I'm joined by Richard, who is live from the Canary Wharf office, and I'm at home today. Richard, welcome. The countdown is on. I'm kind of getting a bit of a taste for the coronation today because it's so sunny, and I'm hoping it will stay the same for when it's the coronation weekend. But we're going to be talking all things coronation, about the funding behind it, what's the weekend looking like. We've had a few news stories coming through this week. You're obviously the best person to talk to about this. So I'll kick off firstly with a poll that you tweeted out this week, Richard, which is from YouGov, which is about the coronation funding and whether people think that public money should be going into it or should be funded by the government. Richard, talk me through this then, because you were quite surprised by the results of this poll.
Was I surprised? I mean, I said, "Oh, well, this is awkward" on Twitter because
you did. Okay, you found
it's funny, but in a way, I'm not surprised. Okay. I mean, I should say that this didn't actually make our paper. I mean, I thought it was quite an interesting story, but British newspapers, and I think it's the same elsewhere. They tend to reflect the values, the interests of the readers, and for whatever reason, I think our editors thought that our readers on the paper side don't want to hear about how people having a downer on the coronation. But the website, the Express website, did cover it very fully, actually, more fully than I did on social media. So, in a way, I'm not surprised because if anybody is asked, do you think you should be paying for whatever? I suspect the answer is always no, and I did say I did tweet that in reply to somebody that it depends how you ask the question sometimes. If you ask somebody, do you think you should pay more tax? Inevitably, I suspect the majority would say no. But if you ask, do you think we should fund more hospitals, better schools, invest more money in public services in general, then you would probably get a very different answer. So I think you do have to set this in context. And in fact, Craig Prescott, a constitutional academic at Bangor University, responded to it, and I think I agree with his view, which is that people always overestimate the likely costs of these events to the public purse and sort of underestimate the amount of money that is spent on other things. And I guess when you look at it, this is this coronation, the cost of it is going to be a drop in the ocean compared to the sort of money that has been spent by government departments. I mean, if you think, I think I've already mentioned this once on one of these programs, that if you think about the £15 billion that was wasted on PPE equipment that can't be used or won't ever be used during the pandemic, then a few million on the coronation is probably neither here nor there. But I mean, I think it does raise some interesting issues, and I mean, one of them I think is just the lack of transparency from the royal household and also from the British government about the costs of this coronation. I've been asking at regular intervals for an estimate of the costs. I mean, I think you can understand that they won't know for sure until it's happened, but they must be working towards some sort of budget. But you can't even get the palace or the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, the government department that's sort of taking the lead on this, to give you any sort of ballpark figures, to even confirm whether they are working to a budget or whether it's just, we'll spend what it takes. And I find that really frustrating. Yeah, and I don't think it helps. No, because as I say, I'm not coming from it from an angle that, my paper is unlikely to write a story saying this is a waste of public money. We just want, it would just be helpful to know roughly how much it's going to cost.
And do you think this is down, literally, straight from the top down, from King Charles to say, look, I don't want the cost of this coronation becoming public knowledge?
Well, the government's line is that it will be able to tell us the costs of the coronation when it's over. Probably quite a few months after, and we have seen it do that on some occasions. I think there was a parliamentary question and answer about the cost to the taxpayer of William and Kate's wedding, and I think Harry and Meghan's wedding, and it's a lot less than the sort of figures that get bandied around, including, I have to say, by people like me in the media. On this occasion, I haven't really speculated, though, and I've probably erred on the side of caution. I've said that I'm guessing that it will be, I don't know, 12 or 15 million pounds, something like that. I might have underestimated badly. I mean, some people have estimated it at 100 million pounds.
Wow.
I'd be surprised if it was that much, but even if it was, again, it compared with the sort of budgets that government departments have, it's not a huge amount of money. I suppose another argument that one sees quite regularly is, well, they're really wealthy, aren't they? So the royals, so why can't they pay for it themselves? And indeed, I've just before we came on air, I was looking at the Press Association wires, and there's been a debate in Parliament today about it. Richard Burgon, a Labour MP from Leeds, has been asking questions about the cost of the coronation and asking exactly that, saying that there was a recent report suggesting that the king was worth £1.8 billion. Why can't he pay for it? As I say, I think those figures are slightly misleading. I just do wish that they were more open and transparent about it. And I think, as is often the case on royal matters, actually, our friends in Canada, I think, set a really good example here. And one of the things they do as well is so they will provide usually an answer specifying the cost to the Canadian taxpayer of a visit by a member of the royal family, checking in from Canada, Julie Johnson said.
Okay.
And what, as I understand it, what they also do is include the salaries of the people who've been seconded to plan for these visits. And so I think that ought to be the case for the coronation as well. So you will have, I can think of particular individuals at Buckingham Palace who have been engaged more or less solely on the coronation since last September, and I'm sure that's also the case at various government departments. So I think that's the best thing to do, to be open and honest about it. But unfortunately, there is just this mindset in the British establishment, the British political establishment, but also the royal household. The default position is essentially, we don't want to tell the public that unless we have to, and I think that's really, really wrong. And
I mean, I can imagine people who don't follow the royal family will think that's super, super unfair that they can't release that. Greg says the public should not have to pay for a 500-year history. So you have people on one end of the spectrum who are, complete royalists, and then you obviously have anti-monarchists. Eileen, Purse shouldn't be paying, maybe a donation. Royal family need to pay, or more than half people are using food banks, they can afford it. Of course, this all happens at a cost of living crisis, which the king is very well aware of, isn't he, Richard?
He's very mindful of that, and I think that's why we see, it's a cost of living. It's a cost of living coronation. There's a balance to be drawn because the palace is under orders, really, from the British government to put on a show, to put on a great show. So not just the palace, the armed forces, and people in the government departments. They're under orders from ministers, because the feedback they've got from British missions abroad, trade missions and cultural missions, is that the worldwide coverage of Queen Elizabeth II's funeral and the events leading up to that, that sort of 2-week period, just showcased the UK at its best and prompted a lot of interest, a lot of interest from businesses thinking about investing in the UK, and also people thinking of visiting the UK. And indeed, I've been to Buckingham Palace this morning to look at to get a preview of an exhibition that's coming on at the Queen's Gallery, which is about Georgian, the way that Georgians dressed. Got some interesting things in there, but I was also asking, are you seeing the benefits of the coronation, interest in the coronation? And what I was told was, we always see, an uptick when there's a big royal event on. Increase in visitor numbers, increase in tourist spend, usually. And they're already seeing, they've seen since September, they've seen an increase, particularly at Windsor, in number of visitors.
I mean, they will get, tons of tourism coming over for the coronation weekend. I know that someone in my family's mum is coming over from America for the coronation weekend. So I'm sure that will be one of many tourists who want to come over for the weekend, which is tight.
Yes, yeah.
Nice.
And I think it's also just, it's not even just that for those few days, it's the increased exposure, media exposure that London and the UK get. It just makes you think, Britain looks. If it's pouring with rain, it might not be so great. But if it's a nice sunny day on Coronation Day and that weekend, people might just look at it and think, UK. When been to the UK before?
It looks rather nice. I have to say, when I was watching the Queen's funeral, I did think, when there was that really moving image of the coffin and the hearse going around Scotland down, I actually did think, oh, actually, that looks extremely picturesque. Obviously, very, very tragic situation, very, very sad. But it did actually make me think, oh, actually, I'd quite like to go and visit there. So I'm sure I wasn't the only person who thought that. In a weird way, I appreciate, it was a funeral, but I did think that. And I'm sure we'll have the same kind of thing with the coronation. But let's talk about the coronation weekend in general then.
Just on the costs as well, on who's paying and why they're paying. So it is the taxpayer paying. It's the government mainly. The royal household will pay a share of it, I think, but from the sovereign grant, which comes from the taxpayer. It's benchmarked to the profits of the Crown estate, private or arm's length property empire, but it's taxpayers' money essentially that comes from it, that pays for it. So the government through their existing departmental budgets, and then the royal family through their existing budgets, will pay for it all. And we've already seen a couple of people on here say, don't think the taxpayer should be paying for it. It is our head of state. It's a state occasion, and somebody very helpfully a few weeks ago pointed me to some research that was done in the US after Donald Trump's inauguration as president. I haven't seen anything similar for Joe Biden's inauguration, but I'm imagining it's something similar, if not a bit more. But the US taxpayer pays about $200 million for a presidential inauguration once every 4 years. And this is something that hasn't happened in this country for 70 years. There is an argument to say, why do we need a coronation? He became king as soon as his mother died. There's some academic argument about, are there some legal niceties that need to be sorted out only at coronation? The coronation oath, things like that. The oath that the sovereign takes at the coronation is, I suppose, the nearest. What people say is the nearest thing to sort of setting out the Britain's constitutional position, really, the way that Britain is governed.
Mm.
That's Westminster Abbey.
It is indeed.
Westminster Abbey. Westminster Abbey is open to tourists until April the 25th, and
not long now.
Not long, and then it'll be closed for preparations for the big day. The royal family, meanwhile, have been practicing in the ballroom at Buckingham Palace because they can't use the Abbey at the moment.
And I'm pretty sure I've seen, is it the artillery? Correct me if I'm wrong, Richard. Who've been rehearsing in the evening in London as well. So everyone is very much underway with rehearsals, which is exciting. It's all happening. So obviously the plans so far, we got some new news this week about the Sunday concert. Obviously that will happen after the Saturday, which is obviously the occasion, and then the celebratory concert on the Sunday. Who is going to be playing at the concert?
So they've announced a few headliners, and there are more announcements to be made. It's I suppose the three biggest names were Take That, Lionel Richie, and who else was? I'm trying to think who else was announced.
Okay. This is also, lots of people were saying when it was when there were talks happening for this coronation concert that, lots of artists from the King's generation, he'll probably be quite gutted by they wouldn't be able to play, but somehow, they've got some really big names like Take That, who are one of Britain's most popular bands to date. So that's huge in itself. And Lionel Richie, I can't see him complaining about that, Richard. You'd know more than me.
No, well, Katy Perry was the other one. Her name just slipped out of my mind for a minute. I suppose it's very middle of the road, quite not down with the kids, is it? Some critics would say.
I suppose.
Critics would also say that, they might have expected Ed Sheeran or Elton John or some other big British names. I think it's been quite well documented that quite a few of them have said they can't perform because they've got other things on at that time. So I think it'll still be a pretty good lineup, and there'll be a worldwide television audience, I should imagine. Certainly it's being shown live on BBC.
For the Platinum Jubilee, where we saw all the royals sitting and watching the parade go by, we had some fantastic shots of Prince Louis misbehaving, being very cheeky, as anybody that age would be. Should I say misbehaving? Just being very cheeky. Can we expect the same again then on the Sunday, where we'll get that, really, really good picture of them all sitting together? What's it going to be like?
Oh, well, I do hope so. There are going to be about 20,000 people there in the grounds of Windsor Castle. And I think there'll be a big party from the royal family. We know that Prince Harry won't be there, I think he'll have gone back by then. I think he's heading straight back. Certainly, his office has briefed that they don't expect him to be at the coronation concert, so
he'll be flying back that evening then.
Well, pretty quickly. That's my understanding. That things may change, but that's what's been briefed. I think that it's a fleeting visit, and the only event he's the only public event he'll be at is at the coronation itself.
Okay, then. So
Yeah.
not at the concert. Well, he
Yeah.
won't get to like final.
It's in the evening. It starts at 7 o'clock, I think. So that's the only thing, is whether it's going to be a bit late for Prince Louis in particular.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's a very special occasion, though. I
it
would
is a
like.
special,
Yeah.
yeah, it is a special occasion, and they won't be at school on the Monday.
Yeah,
Uh,
if I was Prince Louis, I would definitely be putting my foot down over that. Okay, then. And in terms of guest lists, we've just spoken about Harry there. You know, you can expect him to be there. Meghan will be at home with the children.
yes,
But a couple of other stories have been going around this week about Sarah Ferguson not coming to the
yeah,
coronation.
yeah.
She said she's happy to be at home, apparently having her own little coronation party, which I'm sure actually probably won't be that little. But that's quite surprising, Richard, because I thought that she would be there. Because if we, cast our minds back to a year ago, we've seen her at lots of different occasions, and she is, despite the fact not being a senior member, working member of the royal family, she obviously does have big ties with the royal family.
Yeah, she always says, and officially, I think the royal family has always said that she's no longer a member of the royal family, although she she certainly still had an entry on the official royal family website the last time I looked, but that may have changed now. I I'm not that surprised actually that she's not going. And to be fair to her, she never suggested she would be, as far as I'm aware. I mean, she's been doing a long round of interviews on both sides of the Atlantic to promote her latest book. And she certainly has, on several occasions, said that she didn't expect to be invited. And she put it quite well. I think she said, "Look, I got divorced. I'm not part of the royal family any longer. You can't have it both ways." I suppose one of the reasons why there might have been some speculation that she might get an invitation is that she was invited to spend Christmas with the family at Sandringham for the first time in many years. Um,
Yeah.
after her breakup with Prince Andrew and after the divorce, Prince Philip wouldn't be in the same room with her if he could possibly avoid it. I mean, she used to have to time her appearances when she did go up to Balmoral, time her appearances to try to avoid when he was going to be there. And at Christmas at Sandringham, for quite a few years, she had a spell of staying in one of the cottages or farmhouses on the 20,000 acre Sandringham estate, but not in the actual house itself, so that she wouldn't be with the royal family in the morning, but she would be, her daughters would go and see her later on in the day, take a walk out to where she was staying. And I think she found that quite depressing and humiliating.
Yeah.
And so she stopped it completely, and she just did something else on Christmas Day. And she often went to abroad. I think I can seem to remember going to Thailand one year.
Are Camilla and her close friends, I imagine?
I don't think so. I think she and Diana were very
Yeah,
close.
I was going to say.
But I don't believe that she and Camilla are that close. But I think the king, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because you always have to try to divide up what people do as a family and what they do as the head of state and other people representing the head of state on official business, and inevitably it all gets mixed up. So, Prince Andrew, for example, was with the royal party at church on Easter Sunday, and immediately there was some speculation. Is the king trying to worm Andrew back into public life? But I just don't see any sign of that. I think the king and his immediate heir, Prince William, believe that there is absolutely no future in public life for Prince Andrew. That doesn't mean that he's not going to, that the king isn't going to, extend hospitality to his brother and spend time with him privately behind the scenes. And yeah, I guess that was public because a small media party, a rota was invited to cover the royal party going to church. So it's a really grey area. I mean,
and
but anyway, the long and short of it, yes, Fergie's not going. She's going to be spending Coronation Day watching it all on TV with um, our colleague Emily Ferguson. Spoke to her the other day, and she said she was going to get, I think, some champagne and have the corgis with her, and she'll be watching it on the sofa.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
And then the other notable person who has said they've not been invited is Lady Pamela Hicks, the daughter of Lord Mountbatten. Lord Mountbatten was Prince Philip's uncle. His sister, Princess Alice of Battenberg, married into the Greek royal family. And that again, I think some people were surprised by that because she, Lady Pamela, is it was her 94th birthday this week. She went to the previous two coronations, and also is one of only two surviving bridesmaids from the Queen's wedding to Prince Philip. The other one is Princess Alexandra. So her daughter, India Hicks, had been saying, she might be one of perhaps the only person or one of a small number of people to have been to 3 different coronations.
But Richard, why would she be left off?
I don't think it's a snub or anything. I think it's just that there's not a lot of space. There's at the moment, I think there are about 2,300 people on the guest list. Depends who you speak to. I spoke to one person who said they thought it might be up to 2,500, and another person said 2,300 was the current number.
And that's been massively cut down.
Yeah, there were 8,000 at the 1953 event. And they built special stands. Westminster Abbey still bears the scars from the damage done by the erection of those stands in 1953. So I think there was an idea right from the start this time that wanted to put on a good show to showcase Britain, but nothing as big as 1953. And we've already seen that with the military parade. You mentioned that we saw the Household Cavalry out on Monday. I think it was Monday afternoon, practicing down the Mall, and then overnight took part in the first sort of full rehearsal for the procession going to and from the Abbey, certainly involving the Household Cavalry.
And how many members of the military can we expect to see on the day? Hundreds.
Well, so we can expect to see about 6,000 on the day.
Wow.
But that's why I just slightly temper what I said, because it was only the Household Cavalry taking part, so they were pulling carriages, not the carriages that will be used to take the King and Queen Camilla to and from the Abbey, but just some substitute ones. But they were out, and my understanding is that the armed forces, the 6,000 people who are due to take part in that ceremony, are rehearsing at the moment, but separately. There's going to be a massive rehearsal at RAF Odeon, I think next week, and Odeon has the space for them to all practice together. But at the moment, because of restrictions on space, they're also rehearsing separately. So so the Household Cavalry provide the Sovereign's escort going to the Abbey from Buckingham Palace, about 200 of them involved. And then there's a much larger coronation procession coming back, involving all sorts of military units from all three forces. And then there's a flyover as well from the RAF Army and Navy.
And that makes for some good pictures, Richard.
Yes.
That does make some good pictures. Now, in terms of all the military that are taking part, the royal family have obviously got very special ties with the military. Is there any plan in place, obviously, for when that's done, the royal family will, be going and having a private celebratory, late lunch, I suppose, somewhere? For any of the military taking part, do you know if they're going to be, gifted with anything or be put on a lunch or something for all of their efforts? Do we know? I know that's
well, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there will be various royal visits afterwards where they'll meet units that have taken part in the coronation day to thank them for their service. There will be a big lunch at Buckingham Palace, I think, for the family, the extended family, and so I think we'll see non-working members of the family, people like Zara and Mike, Peter Phillips, all sorts of people there afterwards, but still to be confirmed yet. But I think strongly suspect that when it comes to going out on the balcony, it'll probably just be the working members of the royal family who go out on the balcony.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
Still to be confirmed, though.
Well, that gives us a little bit of an indicator of what the coronation weekend is going to be like. I'm sure there'll be lots more coming next week before the big days just around the corner. Now, we're going to go to this week now, as we're not quite at the coronation yet. The Prince and Princess of Wales have been seen together for the first time in a while on a public outing to Birmingham today. There you go. There's some videos. Richard, we nabbed off your Twitter. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah.
There they are, getting out. They seem in very good spirits.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very good fun. Obviously, I haven't been there. We've had other pool reporters, roads reporters covering that today. And great fun. They went to an Indian restaurant when they arrived there and were sort of helping out. And there's a lovely moment when Prince William, lovely moment when Prince William answered the phone to somebody who wanted to book a table for two, and he took the booking. The couple have since turned up, and so they just didn't realise who they were talking to. But it's good fun, all of that.
It is good
and
fun.
I think there've been a few other bits of fun and games while they've been there as well. So quite a light visit, but it's sort of it's a day out in Birmingham to pay tribute to what a lot of people still call the UK's second city. I mean, there's a debate about whether Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds, Glasgow, but I think most people still call Birmingham the second city, so paying tribute to the influence of Indian cuisine there. I mean, the Balti was invented in Birmingham, and they've also been meeting young, creative people, artists, playwrights, actors, in a pub there. So it's been a good visit from what I understand, and I'm going off in a minute to write about it.
Okay, well, we won't keep you too long. Well, we've also obviously seen the Prince of Wales in Birmingham, but we also saw the Prince of Wales on Lorraine virtually this week. So let's have a quick look if we can.
Hi Lorraine, just want to say a big thank you to you and your team for all you're doing to raise awareness around bowel cancer through your No Buts campaign. As you know, I got to meet Dame Deborah, so I know how important this was to her. 46,000 people in the UK get diagnosed each year with bowel cancer, and yet many of us don't know the signs and symptoms of bowel cancer, particularly in us men. So if you're watching this, please take a second to listen and learn about the signs and symptoms of bowel cancer. It could save your life.
So This came obviously from when we saw those very moving images in one of Dame Deborah's last few days, where she was at her family home before she sadly passed, and she had a huge following, and she has now raised millions of pounds for bowel cancer whilst she was still alive, and through her passing as well. Obviously, that is not the picture of Dame Deborah there, but I digress. We did have that lovely video that the Prince of Wales did send over. Richard, the royal family have got so many different charities and so many things to bring awareness to. How do you know the difference between a personal tribute like that and some of the sort of, I guess, like ribbon cutting? He didn't have to do that, did he?
No, he didn't. I mean, I just think he took a very close personal interest in her story. He went to see her, didn't he, in those last few days, and was very moved by what she'd done. And that is very much a personal thing that he's done. I think you're right to make the distinction between sort of day-to-day charitable activities that they get involved in supporting, and that which is quite personal. I think we're probably, I mean, I haven't calculated it, but my guess is that we've seen an increasing number of personal messages from William and Kate on social media in the last few months. They seem to be using that as a vehicle to get their message across much more, and that. But sort of personal, initialed statements, paying tribute to the outgoing New Zealand Prime Minister a few weeks ago, for example, or Jacinda Ardern, and football, paying tribute to other sports people. So it's an interesting development, but quite a moving tribute today, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting to sort of see him in that kind of light, instead of, as you said, at those formal occasions. And maybe it does give a glimpse of how we're going to see the future in terms of actually getting out messages from the royal family, which, as you said, we've been seeing a fair bit of. Okay, well, the countdown is officially on to the coronation. That gives you a little bit of an insight as what's been going on in the royal family leading up to it, a bit about the military rehearsals, and of course the guest list. So, Richard, I will let you get on with the articles that you need to write. I've also got a few social media bits I need to do myself. So, Richard, thank you once again.
No worries. Were you going to mention the WhatsApp, the royal WhatsApp?
I was indeed. Thank you very much. There is a Daily Express Royal WhatsApp, which you can join, which brings you all of the latest breaking news and royal stories to your phone every single day. It is a community that you can join. You don't worry, you're not going to be absolutely spammed. We send about 1 or 2 of these messages a day with 3 or 4 of the top headlines and stories straight to you, so you will never have to miss another royal story again. You can join the community. We're going to pin a comment on the YouTube channel as well as on our Facebook live stream, so you can join that through there. We also on Instagram have the link to joining the WhatsApp every single day on our stories. So, Richard, thank you. He's going to be very, very busy these next few weeks. So you can catch everything that Richard is up to over on his Twitter at Royal Reporter. And of course, you can catch all the things that we're doing on the Daily Express over on our Twitter too. Richard, thank you.
Thanks, Pandora.